If I was to tell you to think of one person when I say DaVinci Resolve, there's a pretty good chance you thought of this guy. Alex. As one of the GOATs of DaVinci Resolve editing tutorials, he really needs no introduction. And today he came on the show and I got to ask him questions for over an hour. We talked about how he got into YouTube.
I gave myself homework.
We talked about our approaches on how we use the cut page.
It's kind of like Final Cut, but worse in every way, so no, I hate it.
We nerded out about his new plugin that is freaking fantastic.
And now it's like, oh cool, I have a business and I have a product and this is really exciting.
And he even gave me his editing philosophies on how he makes a fantastic tutorial edit.
And I think my channel's done well and it's grown because of that.
I love this conversation, getting to talk with Alex, and I can't wait to share it with you guys, so let's dive right in. Alex, what is going on, my man? Welcome to the show.
What's up?
Thank you so much for joining today. Selfishly, I'm really excited for this one. I'm the biggest nerd for editing, but also for like the DaVinci Resolve stuff. I don't know what else to call it, but I am just so excited to get to chat with you today because I sense, maybe I'm wrong, but I sense that you're going to just be able to go deep with me. So I'm really, really excited for that.
Hopefully we can nerd out and talk about some proper DaVinci Resolve nerd stuff. Usually when I talk to my friends about DaVinci Resolve, they just stare at me and ask me to leave. So it's really nice to be able to talk about this sort of stuff. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, dude, of course. Yeah, you're going to be surprised because I'm going to be like, no, just keep giving it to me. I won't just slowly turn away.
Yeah. I mean, that's where my expectation is. So as long as you don't do that, I'm in for a good time.
You can count on that, I promise. All right, so to kick things off, I like to do a little bit of a rapid fire round, just kind of get us into the flow, not necessarily, the most technical questions, but the fun ones. The people always love these, and then we can dive into the nitty gritty. But first rapid fire question, NLE of choice.
I mean, it goes without saying, doesn't it? My whole career is built on DaVinci Resolve, so it's got to be. Imagine if I was like, secretly Final Cut, but don't tell anyone.
I actually have been editing everything in Final Cut, but I teach DaVinci.
Or imagine if it was worse. I was like, I love Filmora, but don't tell anyone.
A second rapid fire question, when you're editing your tutorials, do you find music in like a music app before you do it, or do you usually put it in after you've cut up the video?
If I'm ever editing to music, so sometimes I'll try and do my intros to a bit of a beat and I'll try and make them kind of punchy. It's always music first. I envy the people that can cut first and then put a track in afterwards, or have an idea of what it's going to sound like in their head and then cut something. I just can't do that. I need the music there. And I'm like, right, literally like counting the beats and be like, okay, this is how it's going to come together. It's I'll sometimes even hear a song or a track and I'm like, I know what would work well with this, and I can sort of envision the edit in my head from listening to the track. So I'm always that way around. I'm always music first, cut to the track.
Rapid number 3, what is you're sitting down, getting ready to just grind on an edit. Do you have like a go-to snack or drink or both while you're editing?
Number 1, it's got to be coffee. I can't do anything without a nice cup of coffee. Number 2, I don't know if you get this in the States. Hang on, I have a bottle here. This stuff called Huel.
Oh, yeah, we have that.
Oh, I love this stuff because I've got a mini fridge down here and I just stack it full of these sort of meal shakes, and it's just the best. I don't like to have them for every meal and like every day, but if I'm feeling a bit peckish but I'm in that sort of flow state and I just want to grab something to keep me going, they're perfect. I love them.
Question number 4, what is your setup in terms of laptop or desktop, or like what machine are you using to edit on right now?
So I'm one of these weird people. I have a Windows PC. Windows PC is my main rig. It's a full sort of Ryzen 5950X. I've got a NVIDIA RTX 4080 in there. It's kind of my go-to. I've got this desk. It's like a sit-stand desk, so I always stand up when I'm recording. I found that I can't talk if I'm sat down. Really weird. I don't know why. So I stand up. I've got my 2 monitors here, and this is my go-to. I do also have a Windows laptop, which I kind of like, but obviously you have to be by a plug. And then I've also got a MacBook Pro, which is, I'm going to be away from the wall and I need to be able to edit stuff. So I've got the MacBook Pro, and that's kind of me. The joy of DaVinci Resolve is it doesn't matter. Literally, I can start a project on the PC, get halfway through it, grab the MacBook, go sit in a cafe, and just carry on. So it's the best. Like it literally doesn't matter.
Question number 5. Are you a dual monitors guy when you're working on your desktop then, or what do you got going on there?
Yeah, dual monitor for the win. It's so hard to go. That is the struggle when you jump to a laptop. You're like, it's so squished, tiny.
Right. Okay, and this is a good question for you as a fellow Resolve nerd. Do you full screen timeline when you do dual monitors or no?
No, I don't, which is controversial but it puts. I would full screen timeline if I could customize the second screen, but you can't choose where the stuff goes, and I just don't like the layout. So I've got like an ultra wide. I've got a 34-inch ultra wide monitor, so I just do the standard DaVinci Resolve sort of layout on that one, and I just use another 16:9 monitor for the output. How do you find the cut page? Because obviously the cut page is kind of designed to fill that gap, and I know some Final Cut users that like it, and others just go, it's kind of like Final Cut, but worse in every way, so no, I hate it.
I am probably more in the latter camp. Here's what I'll say, as kind of like someone who learned through the magnetic process. I feel like the cut page is close, but it's just far enough off that it really like turns me off from using it consistently. But I will say, because I was so intrigued, like Blackmagic, they release stuff and I'm always impressed with how thoroughly they think through things, right? That's the thing that always gets me, is like I'm just amazed at how this application that should feel like a total disaster is just really well thought through, right? Because there's so much going on. And so when I saw the cut page, I was like, this ain't it. Nice try, boys. You sucked. But I will say, on certain projects, I've started using it simply as a tool for kind of just like the selects process with the speed editor. So if I just use it for that, I love it. I actually really like it because I feel like scrubbing preview seems to be like better optimized. So I feel like I'm missing less stuff. And then just having that interface of being able to just, cut, scroll, throw stuff in, and then basically take it from that to the edit page, I've actually really liked. So, which I think is what they designed it for, right? The more I use it like that, the more I'm like, okay, I think they really did try with pretty good success to have these tabs be how you should use Resolve throughout it.
Yeah, and I'm actually in the same camp. And I've always told people that it's kind of, you start in the cut page, you need to learn the edit page because you're going to end up in the edit page. You can't do everything in the cut page, but it's a good place to start. Whenever I'm teaching a beginner as well that kind of knows nothing about editing, I'll show them the cut page first because there's way less things going on. It's much easier to learn. It's less intimidating. And it's kind of, if you know what you're doing on the cut page, then you can jump onto the edit page. And in a workflow environment, I think that works as well. The only thing they kind of changed when they released the iPad version, because obviously you've got the DaVinci Resolve app on iPad is purely the cut page. And the problem with that is you kind of only do half a project, because previously you couldn't do any sort of J&L cuts and you couldn't do any sort of audio sort of normalizing or anything like that. So they are now bringing the cut page up to be the full thing. You can do everything in the cut page. It's not there yet, but I think that's where they're going with it.
All right, Alex, that was all of the quickfire questions that I had. Loved all of your answers. The next kind of thing that I really want to dive into, hopefully most people here on the Jake Felzine family know who you are. They should, because you're the OG master of the DaVinci Resolve tutorial landscape on YouTube, in my opinion. But I am curious, and for maybe people who don't know, I think just kind of your background on what got you started in this whole niche on YouTube, all of that. You've kind of mentioned it a little bit before, but I think maybe a concise summary of why'd you start doing this, man? Like what got you into this? What led you up to this point? I'm dying to know.
It's a slightly strange story, to be fair. I've worked in IT, so I've worked in with computers and stuff, my main career for a long time. I never went to university, so I don't have a particularly long sort of education. The highest qualification I have is in exercise and fitness, which, you know, doesn't apply to anything that we're doing. And while I was working my day job, I was into photography. So I would just one day, I was like, YouTube's becoming a thing. This is probably like 6 or 7 years ago. People are talking about photography. I was watching like Digital Rev and all these kind of channels that talked about camera gear. So I was like, I'm just going to jump on. I'm going to try and make a video, talk about the camera that I had at the time, which was a Canon 6D, I think it was. And I just made some videos. And I didn't know how to edit, so I was trying to learn how to edit. And at the time, someone was like, DaVinci Resolve is free. It's not the best editor in the world. It's more of a color thing, but they're trying to do some stuff with the editing side, so you should download it and try it. So I did. Made loads of mistakes. Didn't know what the hell I was doing at all. There was only a handful of people making tutorials. Like Casey Farris was doing some, and there was a few other channels, but it wasn't like it is today when there's loads of channels. I gave myself homework. I was like, I'm going to learn something, learn a few things, and make a video. So the first one I did was like 5 tips for beginners. It was kind of the 5 mistakes I made, which I then figured out what I'd done wrong. I made a 5 tips video, and it did really well for my channel. I had like 50 subscribers at the time. People weren't watching my stuff, but this video did really well. So I knew that I wasn't the only person in that position. So I just thought, right, I'm going to do this every week. I'm going to learn something new. As a complete kind of noob and a complete idiot, I would figure out what's going to trip people up because I'm going through it for the first time. So I would learn something, kind of write down all the things that I found difficult or thought were problematic, made a video, called it 5 Minute Friday, and it just went from there. I did that every week for like 2 or 3 years or something. And it just snowballed. It just kept growing. And it was kind of the perfect storm because I was learning. I was educating myself. I was getting better. I was learning about how YouTube worked because I was the algorithm and all this sort of stuff. I was getting comments, which enabled me to go, oh, I didn't think about that. I'll try and learn that thing. And I was learning Resolve at the same time. So I was just developing and I was just learning and I was just in this snowball that kept rolling, and now I'm here somehow.
I don't know if it's a leading question or a little bit of an obvious one, but I mean, I think what's interesting to me about that story is you started into being into photography and then kind of have moved into editing. The thoughts that are bouncing around in my brain is, I think, you kind of had the video that hit, which inspired you to do that. There clearly was a hole in the market and you filled it, but then you've stuck with it, right? So there's clearly like a love for it there. And I mean, what about it do you think really just like hooked you in so much?
Yeah, it was kind of both. So I don't think I would have necessarily stuck with it if there wasn't a reward at the end of it. You do something good, you get a reward. And I was loving the process, but I probably would have got, a few months in, figured I know enough now to edit my projects. I'll stop there and then I'll just keep talking about cameras or whatever. But because as I was learning, people were enjoying it, people were benefiting from it, and I was seeing the reward in the fact that my YouTube was growing, that meant I was excited to learn something new. So as I say, it was both. Like, it was the success of the channel was making me enjoy the process of learning and getting stuck into DaVinci Resolve. And even, 18 months later, I was like, I've just found this really cool thing that I'm really excited about. And there's a bunch of nerds online, and I know they're going to be excited too. So it wasn't just like, I'm excited on my own about this thing I've learned. I know there was people that were excited to hear it. So it was this perfect storm, and it just kept going, and they fed off each other. The success of the channel meant that I was excited to learn, and it kept going.
And two, it kind of perfectly aligned with DaVinci's really aggressive trajectory, right? Because like you said, I'm trying to remember. So I started playing around with it whenever the Pocket 4K came out, because I bought that camera because, everyone loved that camera. And I was like, okay, I got to give it a rip. I still own that camera today. I kind of hate it, but love and hate. I use it all the time, but I'm like, man, like, it's good, but it sucks. But of course, you got the studio license for free, with it, and so I wanted to play around with it. And it's kind of the same. I think it had to have been similar to around kind of when you started, and I was like, yeah, I've been using Final Cut. This doesn't feel there yet, but like you said, kind of with everyone's desire for it, also Blackmagic was improving it at such a quick pace, because I think it was like version 17. I mean, it has just been non-stop crazy new features, crazy performant. I mean, like 17 and beyond has just been crazy. And I think that what's cool about what you're saying is you've got people who are hungry for it, you're loving teaching it, and the company is also giving you all of these things to go learn all of the time. I mean, it really is kind of like a perfect storm.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm the first to admit there was a lot of luck involved in me being here because I just happened to be trying to do this thing at the right time. But you're totally right. Like, I started on DaVinci Resolve 15. They just turned to DaVinci Resolve 15. And 16 came out, and that was when they introduced, like, adjustment clips, which are obviously a big thing. They just make editing a million times easier. And I think 16 was when they introduced the cut page as well. And then 17 came along and they started to do all these AI stuff with magic masks. And then 18 came along, and it's just, you're right, they went from meh, it's kind of a meh editing thing. It's mainly for color, but if you've got no money, try the free version, edit with it. Cool. But now it's like people are actively going out of their way to jump onto Resolve. And it's happened over over the past 2 years. The past 2 years, it's gone from still quite niche, but those that like it, to being mainstream. Everyone's, Pete McKinnon's on it now. He was talking about it. There's Matty's jumped over to it. Sarah Dietschy uses DaVinci. Like, these really big people are all jumping over to it. I mean, the fact that Apple promotes DaVinci Resolve in their own bloody talks, they kind of go, Final Cut, nah, look how well everything runs on DaVinci Resolve. Like, it's just exploded out of nowhere.
No, and I really feel like perfectly wedged right in that niche, because I've like for the longest time I've been watching all of the Final Cut editors, like Dylan Bates, Final Cut Bro, Matthew O'Brien, all of those guys who are like diehard Final Cut people, and I just like constantly hear them, like what you're saying, and I felt this too a little bit, where it's just like does Apple even love Final Cut? And I'm sitting there going like, yeah, I see, like as someone who has switched over and uses both now at this point with like pretty much equal affection, it's weird to like watch both communities like going back and forth, where I'm like, yeah, I feel it. I understand your frustration, Final Cut people. Like, hey, maybe give DaVinci a try. And then they're like, no, I hate it. And I'm like, I know, you gotta push through. It's a total pain, but like once you get good at it, it's really cool. But then, I mean, like, I think the past couple weeks I've been using Final Cut a ton for some client work, just because of how it goes. Everyone's got their specifications, and yeah, it is really interesting how both are a certain way. But where I was going with this tangent is a lot of and I love those channels, but one thing I've really noticed lately is Final Cut content feels kind of stale because they aren't improving it very rapidly. Whereas DaVinci Resolve, it's like, I mean, like you make videos all the time, and half the time it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know about that feature. Or, like, wait, Alex just he's got something else to talk about. It's been like 2 weeks. Like, we haven't even gotten used to how incredible Magic Mask is yet.
It is cool, and it's partly because they keep developing it, and partly because there's so much there. You can just find stuff. I've found things in DaVinci Resolve and going, this is quite cool. And I'll go on Twitter and be like, does anyone know about this? And they're like, yeah, they introduced that 2 years ago. I'm like, how? How have they introduced this really cool thing that no one knows about? Because it is a bit of a behemoth. Like, the fact they're introducing new stuff, as you say, is really cool. The development of it is really cool. The downside, especially compared to Final Cut, is there's menus for days and there's stuff hidden in places, and it can be a bit of a nightmare. But it does mean, as a YouTuber who predominantly talks about DaVinci Resolve, mate, I've got so much to talk about, because it's just like, I find one little button that does something new, and I'm like, cool, there's a video, I can talk about that.
Yeah, and it's super helpful. Well, and that's actually a fun question too. Like, I've probably got one recently, but do you have one in recent memory of a feature that you found that you're just like, wow, this is incredible? Like, hit me with something. I'm curious, because I bet I don't even know about it.
Oh, I mean, stuff they've introduced recently, which has just made my life easier, is like the audio normalization for YouTube.
Yeah.
And like it's not hidden, it was kind of broadcast, but it just makes life so much easier. You just go, yeah, I want it for YouTube, normalize my audio, and it just runs through the entire track at the end, balances everything, so when you upload it, it's all ready to go. And it's a simple thing, but it's just like, oh, it's just so much easier. I don't need to do anything anymore. Save that as a preset, and it's all good. The cloud stuff, I love the cloud stuff. I love that all my projects are in the cloud and all my media is in the cloud now, so I can share it with people, and it just makes life easier. I'm trying to think of something super nerdy and niche that you might not know about.
Actually, I didn't know about the normalization stuff. I thought you were talking about the dialogue leveler button or whatever. So I might have, you'll have to send me a link on the normalization stuff, because that sounds like something I need to know about.
Yeah, so it's on the deliver page. You go to the audio tab and there's an audio normalization, and then you can pick, like, is this project for Netflix or is it for YouTube? And it will set the right dB, so minus 6 dB or whatever, and then it will just run through the entire track and normalize everything. So you don't need to worry. You just go, yeah, there you go, done.
Dude, that's amazing. Okay, yep, there you go. See, I knew I would get something. There's probably 6 more coming as we keep talking about this. Yeah, no, and that's what's funny is I am a huge DaVinci nerd, but I definitely, I mean, like you said, there's always so many things that even I, after years of using it, just don't know, haven't learned, haven't found, and that's why I have loved talking to people. Like, this whole nerding out with people is selfishly so much fun for me, to just hear these things. The one that I found recently that I thought was crazy, and honestly it's because it's buried in the media page and they should put this somewhere else, but the auto scene detect stuff is wicked.
Yeah, it is. It's great.
It's so cool, and I don't understand why it's not somewhere else.
Yeah, because you were saying to Jesse you like to just see how long people's cuts are, and you can just go, cut all the scenes up, and then I can have a look.
Yeah, because it just tells me how many cuts. I take that math, throw it in on how long the video is, and then, scenes per second or cuts per second is super easy to calculate. And the other thing that I've been doing with that recently, I haven't actually used it myself, but I was talking to another buddy. He's like a huge Final Cut lover, loves Final Cut, but he hates color grading in it. He loves using Resolve. Pretty common sentiment. And so what he did, and I don't know if he's tested it yet, but we were hypothesizing, is cut everything in Final Cut, export it out in ProRes log, and then use auto scene detect, because it'll actually make the cuts, so that then you could go in and color grade without having to actually find exactly where you want to color grade. And I was like, yeah, no XML, which is always the best way to go, and no, like, you just have a ProRes file that you're just working with, but it's cut up. I was like, dude, that's genius. Like, we should make a video about that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any flaws in that, but I don't think there is. That would just work, wouldn't it? It would just cut it up, and then you've got all the individual clips on your timeline, and off you go. Yeah, good idea. Something I've done recently, which it's a really obvious thing, and I don't know why I never thought to do it, it's the remote grades. Have you used remote grades on the color page?
No. Tell me about remote grades.
So remote grades, if you put a clip on your timeline and you've cut it up wherever, it doesn't matter where it is on the timeline. If you enable remote grades, if you color grade one of those clips, it will color grade all of those clips.
Yes.
On the timeline.
Yes.
So it will apply the grade to everything. So, like, if you have done a tutorial like this, you've got a couple of different camera angles, or you've got like a screen recording and then your face cam, you don't need to go searching for the face cam and all the different clips and applying the same grade. You just click on one, click use remote grades, grade that one, and everything else on the timeline will be done, ready to go.
Oh.
And it just makes life easy. Because for the same reason, I went down the adjustment clip for a while. I was like, put the grade on there. And then it was actually Darren Mustin was like, just use remote grades. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay, I have one very nerdy question for you, which again, hopefully this helps other people, but I am selfishly very interested to hear your take. In fact, I've been wanting to make a video about it, and this potentially would educate me further before I maybe go out onto the internet and scream about something. But lately I've been doing a lot of Final Cut editing, and the one thing about Final Cut that has been my just lifesaver right now is how unbelievably easy it is to do L and J cuts. And I am curious, as a fellow Resolve lover, I have not found an overly elegant solution for it, and I'm just curious if I'm missing something or like I don't know, like what. So let me preface this. I will oftentimes cut something and raise it up and then slide something in just to make the audio bleed over on top of each other. And even if I was to do, what is it, option click and drag, where you can drag out the audio but not the video, I still feel like I want to do that sometimes where, and this is kind of what I'm curious about you and like how you do this because, I'll put graphics up while I'm talking about this because I'm getting really deep in the weeds here, but like the crossfade on the audio, if they're in the same track, potentially would do what I'm doing here. But I don't know, visually, I find that having them in separate tracks and kind of overlapping is kind of my preference. So just like, how do you do it? Like, what is it that you do there? And do you have any recommendations? I'm just very curious.
So I just do the Alt or Option and drag. So it's, if I'm on Windows, I hold Alt, click, drag to do my L or J, and then I will just drop a crossfade on there. So you can, so I mean, if visually you're not a fan of that, I can't think of any other way to do it other than what you suggested. Just putting it on a separate track. You can set the crossfade to be the default audio transition, which makes life easier. So then you just go like Alt, drag, and then it's Control and T, I think, is the right one, and it would just dump that transition on there. So you can kind of do it relatively quickly. It's like Alt, drag, Control T, done, and then you've got your crossfade. You can make it longer or shorter. If you jump into Fairlight, you can put, there's all sorts of different crossfades that you can do kind of automatically in Fairlight. It's not what I don't bother because I'll just do it on the timeline as I'm going. But you can start to get a bit fancier with it if you jump into Fairlight.
That is probably the answer. Yeah, I get, because so have you used Final Cut before?
No, not really. I've seen it, but I've always been meaning to because I'm like, I have a Mac, I should jump in and see what everyone's talking about, and then I just never get around to it.
No, I was just, it does not matter. I was just curious. But yeah, like when you do L and J cuts, the way that it kind of lets you cross the audio on top of each other and bump stuff out of the way in a really friendly way is just, yeah, it's just such a time saver. But what you said is probably the final piece that I would need. Again, visually, it still isn't my favorite. I don't know why. I hate crossfades and kind of it covers up my waveforms a little bit. I'm not a big fan of it. But if I had it on a hotkey, that would probably be the best way to do it. Okay, I'm gonna yes, locked it in. I'm gonna try that. See how I feel about that. Okay,
Let me know.
I will let you know. I mean, it is the right answer, and I think that again, you learn something one way and you get used to it, and then when you go to do it technically the exact same way. In fact, even the code under the hood might be doing almost identical things, but the UI between the two is just completely different, right?
I had this conversation with Casey Farris the other day. So I don't have, well, I have a few custom keyboard shortcuts to try and speed up my workflow, but I'm not allowed to learn them because when I make a tutorial, I have to use the default ones. So people are like, oh, do you do, just full keyboard only editing where I use like the J, K, and L to whip through the timeline? And I'm like, no, because if I did that in a tutorial, no one would like it. Everyone would be like, how is he doing this thing? So I use like a mouse and a keyboard and the full standard keyboard layout. And it's probably not as efficient as it could be. And I should learn a new method. But then I'd have to know two ways of doing everything, because one for when I'm kind of performing and showing people and one for my own method. So I've stuck to that. And it's a similar thing what you're saying. You just get used to it. And even though you're like, I should learn a better way, I could be more efficient, but it works. So I'm going to stick with this.
I feel that. I've run into that issue before. If I try to teach something in Resolve myself, I'm always having so many sections where I'm like, and I'm hitting this hotkey, which is technically doing this. I have no idea what it is for you, but this is what it is. So just keep that in mind. It's like there's so many qualifiers of like, okay, I'm hitting R, which is opening Fusion. You probably just need to go click the button.
If in doubt, click the button. That's what I always do. Just like click on this big button here.
All right, Alex, next section I got to ask, and I'm also kind of just wanting to again make sure that the internet knows about it because I think it is so cool, but you have gone even nerdier into the DaVinci Resolve realm and made your own plugin called Magic Animate. And I think I've 1,000 questions about this, so probably just to kick us off, like what made you make it and how did you get started into that sphere? Just talk me through that. I want to hear about it.
The reason I made it was, again, my whole philosophy is like video editing is scary. If you're just coming into it, there's so much stuff, and then you learn to cut things up, and you want to do a little title or make your logo pop in, and then someone says, right, you've got to keyframe that, and you go, what? What is a keyframe? And it's a whole thing. And then even at the other end, even if you know what keyframes are, and you're putting together like YouTube videos like we do, you're doing a video every week or twice a week, and it's like, I don't want to have to keyframe this every single time. I want a tool which just does the most common things that I'm going to have to do manually, but it does it for me. And it takes sort of the chore out of it. And that's when Magic Animate was born. It's just a tool which does that stuff for you. The first one I released about 2 years ago. And it was, the philosophy is very similar to my YouTube, kind of. It was, I had this idea. I dug into all these expressions to learn how to automate it, because what it essentially does in the background is it counts frames. So that's kind of how it works. It's counting the number of frames. So you say, I want my little whip transition to take a second. It goes, right, what timeline are you on? 24 frames, cool. I'll count 24 frames. That's how long your animation is going to be. And done. So it worked. So I sort of taught myself all that and messed around and learned that sort of thing. And I gave Magic Animate for free. Gave it out for free to everyone. And the reason it was free was I'd know that I would get loads of feedback and loads of people would watch it. And the video would do well, which would mean it'd go out to more people. And they'd give me feedback. And then I could go, okay, what do people like? What do people not like? And I used that platform to kind of teach myself how to make a product kind of thing. It was like, okay, they love that bit, they don't like that bit. So then I did a version 2. Same thing. It's free. Use it. Tell me if you like it. Tell me if you don't. Tell me what works. Tell me what doesn't, etc. So then when it came to making version 3, I was like, okay, I think I know enough now that if I charge for something, it's going to be worth paying for. You know? I didn't want to charge for something that might suck, because it was like, version 1, this might be terrible. And if I'm like, I want $50 for this thing, which I don't even know if is any good. So when it came to version 3, it was like, right, I know people like this. Version 2 had like 100, I don't even know what it's on now, 120 something thousand free downloads, like hundreds of thousands of downloads. I was like, people like this. So then it was, okay, like, let's try and make it better. I've still done a free version, so anyone can go and download it. But there's a pro version, which you can buy. And now it's like, oh, cool, I have a business and I have a product, and this is really exciting. So that's the full journey in a nutshell, essentially.
No, and I bought it. I love it. I made that video saying that like it should be more than $30 because I think it's literally such a time saver. And yeah, and I think that's what's, and I agree with what you said with your philosophy, right? It is an efficiency boost, right? It's just like take something, which, so I can't remember if I've said this already in this conversation. Like I come from, like I got my degree in computer science. So the word automation is like ingrained in my brain. And so like when you talk about like, oh, I made this product to automate or make these things easier, I'm just like, yes, like I love this. It makes total sense. It can't do everything, but it's not designed to do everything. It's just designed to streamline certain pieces. And yeah, I think it's super cool. And I mean, like, as much as I love doing animations in DaVinci, I absolutely hate keyframing. It is like so tedious. It's so painful. So like, even if you're shaving off like 80% of that, I'm just like, yes.
Yeah. I even had a comment from someone that said they're using it to previs. They're like, I want to make a nicer looking animation, but I just want to have a roughly idea where like something's going to come in and something's going to zoom and blah, blah, blah. And they'll use Magic Animate to kind of get it looking 70% of what it's going to look like at the end. So they roughly know where, and then they'll go and actually do it themselves. Because with Magic Animate, you can go, oh, do I want this to take a second or 1.2 seconds? You know, like they can kind of really quickly in a minute go, okay, I roughly know what this is going to look like. And then they'll go and spend the 2 hours actually keyframing it. And I never thought about that as a use case. And I was like, oh yeah, that's cool.
Totally. 100%. I would do that with, there's a plugin in Final Cut that I love that makes no keyframing really easy, like A to B animation stuff. And I would go do stuff like that in Final Cut previs. Like, hey, is this graphic going to even like remotely look good, and mock it up in there and then be like, okay, yeah, this has potential, and then go actually do it in Resolve. And now with your plugin, I'm like, oh, yes, I can mock it up in Resolve and do it in Resolve instead of having to go back and forth, which is super nice.
To be honest, I'm just glad people like it. And to be fair, I was staring at it for so long when just before I released it. I was like, does this suck? Have I wasted like 4 months of my life? And then I released it and everyone was like, oh, this is cool. I was like, yes, I was right. People do like it.
Yeah, when you're in something, you very often forget, or you just see it too much, right? I mean, and you probably feel this way with like edits, right? Like you get into an edit of even your video and you're just like, this is terrible. Like I cannot look at this video anymore. And people are like, hey, this was amazing. And you're like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, you get this weird sort of negative outlook, don't you, when you start looking at something for so long and you just get full of self-doubt, and then it takes a lot of bottles sometimes just to hit the publish. And then you're like, oh yeah, that was all just in my head. That was totally wrong.
I said maybe last topic would be the tutorial editing. I would love to hear more on just your philosophies around a good tutorial edit. Like, do you have kind of some general tenets or rules or anything that, you know, people might find useful on, hey, here's how I approach a tutorial edit, and here's what I think makes one better than the other. And just to even guide you further, I watch a lot of your tutorials and I feel like, wow, the rhythm in this is really nice. So like, you know, what are your tactics? And I think people would find that pretty interesting.
Sure. The first one, the first and foremost thing, which can actually trip me up sometimes and can be a negative thing, which I'll cover in a moment, but it's value. Just like if I'm going to write something on a board and everything's going to come around the outside of that, value is in the middle. Like, can I provide value to the viewer? Especially if you're doing a tutorial, it's kind of like it needs to have value to the people that are watching. And as long as you build around that, I think you're going to have some sort of success. And I know that probably sounds really obvious, but it's easy to sort of forget and to get into like, I'm going to make this look really jazzy just because I want to. And I think the algorithm will make it go really big and blah, 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 and you can end up with a really fancy video. But if the value isn't quite there, if the value proposition, if someone's clicked on it because the thumbnail and the title say you will learn how to do this one thing, and they have to wait 5 minutes of your just sort of jazziness before they learn the thing, it should be the other way around.
Tutorial starts at 2:20.
Yes. Exactly. You can be yourself and you can have you in it and your personality in it, and you can talk about stuff, but just focus on get the value out there. And I think my channel's done well and it's grown because of that. And it's like, I remember when the YouTube chapters came out, and there's this whole discussion about should you do YouTube chapters because people are just going to skip to the actual answer of their question. And my opinion was, yeah, that's cool. If someone clicks on my video and in 10 seconds, they're only going to watch for 10 seconds anyway. Doesn't matter what I did. They're only watching for 10 seconds. And if within that 10 seconds, they've skipped to the bit they want, they've learned the information, then they go, right, thumbs up, cool video, and then they get on with their day. That's better than if they'd gone, I'm going to watch this for 10 seconds. They've clicked on the scrub through the video, can't find the bit they want. So they've gone, this is useless. I'm going to look at someone else. Like, make it as easy for the viewer to get the thing they want. And those that want to be there for the ride and want to learn about you, they'll be there anyway. They're going to stick around. They're going to enjoy what you do.
Man, lots of thoughts on this, and I'm curious again on your stance. But I think you've made it clear already with just the value statement. But I think a lot of people want to be kind of artistic, right? Like a lot of people are really creative, and I think that they try to bring that into a side of YouTube that is very just the better form of Google, right? Like YouTube gives us real answers with visual aid. I mean, it is like Google on steroids. It's I mean, it makes total sense why Google bought them.
Yeah, like it's. I want it to be clear. I don't think people should like not do the creative stuff. It's just, as you say, it's if you go back and use Pete as an example, when he was doing his 2 Minute Tuesdays, they were never 2 minutes. We all know this, but but they were like here in his office. He sit down, and he shows you how to do something cool. Like that was the 2 Minute Tuesday. And when he was out snowboarding or doing whatever, that was something else. And you can do both. I just don't think you necessarily should always try and do both in the same video. Sarah Dietschy's mantra is really good. She does a one for me and one for them, or one for me and one for you sort of video. So she'll do a video which is purposely designed to help people out and to get views and to be useful to the algorithm. You know, it fits into all that. And the next video she'll do, she won't care about any of that. She'll just make the video she wants to make. And the next video, she'll do one which will go out and get people to watch, blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of you're providing the value, but then you're providing the personality behind it. And I think that's a really cool way of doing it. But if you're trying to make a tutorial, just give people the value and get them in, and you can show your personality because you can try and make it fun. And you can put some flashy visuals in it. But it's kind of they're there to learn a thing, so give them the thing. And if they liked your tutorial, they're probably going to come back and they might want to see you do some other fun stuff because they like the way you presented the tutorial or whatever. But yeah, I think it gets lost. It can get murky when you click on a video and it's, I want to learn how to color grade, and it's a 5-minute intro about making coffee. I'm like, like it's. If this was a video about cinematic coffee making, I'd be all here. I'd love this video, but I clicked on it specifically to learn this one thing, and I'm not learning that thing.
Which I think it's that way with anything in life. I think YouTube is just hyper in our face with it, where it's like you need to immediately deliver on the promise, right? And that's critical. And I mean, that's kind of with movies too. Movies I think, get away with a lot more because they are different, obviously, in the way that they're presented. But yeah, it is really like, what is the title? What is the thumbnail? And then you better be giving me this because I clicked on it. And if not, like, I'm not here for it, right? So yeah, which totally could be, hey, I'm just sitting here making coffee, and people will watch that. I will watch that.
I watched a video the other day of some guy that's got this rodent. It's like a big squirrel, and he just feeds it different fruits, and that's it. And it's the video was like, I can't remember what type of animal it was. Like, my rodent eats a watermelon. I was like, yes, that's exactly what I want to watch. If I clicked on like a DaVinci Resolve video and it was some random rodent eating a watermelon, I'd be like, no. Like, I want to watch that, just not right now. Sorry, man. I've been waffling.
No, dude, I've been waffling too. This is what I love so much about this, because when I first started this, I was like, I am gonna hate this. I'm such an introvert. Talking to people just drains my batteries, and then every time I do this with like fellow YouTube editing nerds, it's just like it's like, oh my gosh, we've talked for like an hour. And I don't feel tired or exhausted, and I could keep going.
Well, it's crazy when you find your people, and you're like, actually, I don't hate people. I just hate most people. Like, I found there are people that I do like because we have interests that are similar. I'm like, oh.
All right, Alex. Well, hey, this has been so fantastic, man. I've absolutely loved talking with you. Gosh, if you'll come back anytime, I mean, I feel like we could have gone for 3 more hours. Real quick, just want to make sure I give you a chance to plug stuff, maybe your socials, Magic Animate. Hit us with where we can find you on the internet.
Sure, I am MrAlexTech everywhere. So Twitter, X, as it's now called, MrAlexTech. Instagram, MrAlexTech, MrAlexTech.com, YouTube.com/MrAlexTech. Just, yeah, there, everywhere, MrAlexTech.
And on your website is where you can buy Magic Animate, right?
It is indeed, yeah. Yeah, again, MrAlexTech.com. I've said MrAlexTech way too many times now. It sounds weird in my own head.
Thank you so much, man. This has been a total blast. I love just geeking out with people, and yeah, would love to potentially have you back again sometime. And just thank you.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, hey, See you guys in the next one.